Bernard Palissy was a man of many talents. He was a self-taught artist, sculptor, surveyor, and lecturer. Although these professions may seem like they are at complete different ends of the spectrum, they're actually all tied together with his love of the natural world. Palissy's interest in nature would lead him to work for some of the most influential people in France. He is most well known for his rustic ceramic wares and his use of lead glazes. As a Protestant in France, he was imprisoned in 1562. A local dignitary took his case to the Queen Mother, and he was finally released. In 1565, he was named inventor of rustic pottery to the King and Queen Mother. Around 1570, he built a pottery grotto for Catherine de Medici at Tuileries. Palissy began his interest in ceramics around 1539. Sometime between 1545 and 1546, he was shown a white porcelain cup which was most likely Chinese. The idea of creating something so beautiful intrigued him. He spent the next several years trying to perfect his own creation of pottery. The idea of using nature to create art drove his passion. During this time, Palissy was quite poor. He is reported to have actually fired his kilns with furniture and floorboards from his home. Palissy's most famous pieces are all pond scenes. He most likely did not use a pottery wheel in creating his works. It's assumed that he used a press mold to create his basic shapes. He then used molds to recreate the plants and animal shapes he applied to his pieces. What gives his pieces such a lifelike appearance is his use of actual animals to create his molds. Palissy used earthenware clay and lead-based glazes to create his works. He used the lead-based glazes because they created an earthy, muddy look that closely resembled the natural environment that his subjects lived in. Most of his works take the shape of circular dishes, ewers, and saucepans. The ability to cast wildlife realistically was considered an art form in itself during the 16th century, so his pieces received quite a bit of praise from the art world. In creating my Palissy type project, I just started with a circular mold and created a base. I decided to not do a pond scene, but to do a different scene from nature. The clay is first stretched out and pressed into the mold, and the shape is formed. This is done using different tools and water to smooth the clay out. I then used press molds to form my natural shapes. I had to use actual molds and did not use real live animals. Each shape is pressed into the mold and formed individually and then added to the piece at a later time. The pieces are then attached to the base using a water and clay mixture known as slip. The design was totally up to me onto what I wanted to do with this piece. I chose to do a garden scene with flowers and bees. The piece was then fired for about 8.5 hours, and when it's done, it's called bisque and looks like this. The piece is then decorated with glaze. Palissy used lead-based glazes, but lead is very dangerous to use, so today we use tin-based glazes known as maiolica glazes. The piece is hand-painted and colored. The glazes are about the same color as they appear in the piece, so it's very easy to decide your color palette. After the piece has been decorated, a layer of clear glaze is added over top. This gives it the glossy appearance. It's also necessary to recreate the natural muddiness that is in nature since we're not using lead-based glazes this time. piece is then fired again for another 8 to 9 hours, and this is the finished project. Even though this is not a pond scene, I believe even Bernard Palissy would believe that this is in his style.